Hello and welcome, everyone. Close your eyes, take a slow, deep breath, and let the gentle quiet of the night settle around you. Allow the noise of the modern world to fade away, step by step, leaving only the calm, rhythmic rise and fall of your breathing. Welcome to Sleepy Space Stories. If you enjoy unwinding with these peaceful journeys through time, please take a soft moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel to join our nightly voyages. Now, sink comfortably into your space, let go of the day, and let us begin our journey back to the very beginning, to Chapter 1, A Frozen World. Close your eyes and let the quiet of the present moment begin to fade away. Allow the walls around you to dissolve, replaced by a vast, open silence that stretches out into the dark. We are traveling back, far beyond the memory of cities, past the gentle hum of our modern lives, stepping backward through thousands of seasons until the world turns raw, untamed, and breathtakingly cold. We are stepping into North America 20,000 years ago, into the heart of the Pleistocene epoch, at the very peak of the last great ice age. Imagine standing on a high, grassy ridge at the twilight hour. The earth beneath your feet is hard, frozen deep into its roots, locked in a perpetual frost that has held the land for millennia. Above you, the sky is not merely a backdrop, but an immense, arched dome of pale, icy blue, washed out by the cold light of a pale sun lingering low on the horizon. The air here is so pure, so sharp, that every breath feels like drinking liquid glass. It fills your lungs with a crisp, stinging clarity, and as you exhale, your breath billows outward in soft, white clouds, drifting slowly before dissolving into the vastness. This is the Mammoth steppe, an endless ocean of golden wind-rippled grasses, pale mosses, and low-lying shrubs stretching out toward horizons that seem to go on forever. There are no forests here to block the view, only the occasional clump of stunted, resilient pines or gnarled willows clinging to the sheltered bends of frozen riverbanks. The wind moves across this landscape like a physical presence, a low, continuous whisper that carries the scent of frost, dry earth, and the faint, sweet perfume of crushed sagebrush. It is a quiet world, but it is not empty. It is a land sculpted by giant forces, inhabited by giant lives. To look out across these sweeping plains is to realize that this cold world is utterly, magnificently alive. In the distance, rising like dark, woolly islands above the sea of gold, a herd of Columbian mammoths moves with a slow, deliberate grace. They are monumental creatures, their towering shoulders draped in thick, coarse fur that sways rhythmically with every massive step. Their enormous ivory tusks, swept in grand, curving arcs, gleam softly under the pale sky. When a mammoth breathes, a great plume of steam erupts from its trunk, hovering in the frigid air like a miniature cloud. They move together, a living fortress of warmth and collective memory, their heavy footfalls vibrating through the frozen ground, a deep, rhythmic thrum that you feel in your chest long before you hear it with your ears. Beside the meandering line of a snow-choked valley, a family of American mastodons browses among the low branches of spruce, their broad, powerful frames built for the darker, wooded edges of this vast realm. Nearby, moving with a ponderous, gentle weight. A giant ground sloth rests against the trunk of a fallen tree. Larger than a modern elephant, covered in shaggy, matted fur, it uses its long, curved claws to reach slowly into the branches, pulling down tender foliage with a serene, unhurried ease that belongs to a time when hours were measured only by the movement of the sun across the sky. This is a world built on a grand scale, where every creature seems designed to endure the profound weight of the cold. High above the plains, sweeping across the vast expanse of pale sky, the shadow of a short-faced bear passes over the snow. Standing tall on long cursorial legs, this titan of the Ice Age moves with a terrifying, effortless speed, a solitary wanderer capable of covering endless miles in search of a meal, its dark eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of movement. And yet, for all the grand size of these visible giants, the true power of this frozen kingdom often resides in what remains unseen. At the edge of the mammoth herd, where the tall, frost-dusted grasses give way to the long, creeping shadows of a shallow ravine, the landscape seems to shift. The wind rustles the golden stems, but in one particular spot, the movement is not caused by the breeze. There is a weight in the shadow, a quiet, concentrated presence that blends seamlessly into the palette of the steppe. It is a saber-toothed cat, Smilodon fatalis, resting motionless against the frozen earth. To look upon the cat in this moment is to see a masterwork of patience and camouflage. Its coat is a warm, tawny golden brown, dappled with subtle, faded spots that mimic the broken patterns of light filtering through the winter grass and frost. It does not look like a creature of swift, long-distance chase. Its body is built for explosive, undeniable power. The shoulders are impossibly broad, a dense knot of heavy muscle designed to pin down prey with devastating force. Its front limbs are thick and strong, built like the trunks of young trees, anchoring the cat to the cold ground with absolute stability. The cat lies so still that it seems carved from the very stone and frost beneath it. Its golden, unblinking eyes are fixed upon the edge of the herd, tracking a young bison that has drifted just a few paces away from the protective circle of its elders. Every muscle in the cat's body is coiled, held in a state of quiet, suspended readiness. Its breath, like that of the giants across the plain, leaves its nostrils in faint, slow curls of white mist, but the cat does not move a fraction of an inch. It is an absolute shadow, an invisible thread woven directly into the fabric of the Ice Age night. In the mouth of this patient hunter lie the weapons that have made its name immortal. Two massive, knife-like canine teeth, curved like scimitars, slipping down past its lower jaw. They are silent promises of the end, designed not for crushing bone, but for delivering a swift, merciful quiet to the throat of its prey. Yet for now, those weapons remain hidden, tucked away in the deep silence of the stalk. The sun sinks lower, dipping beneath the edge of the world, painting the snowfields in shades of soft lavender, deep cobalt, and gentle violet. The temperature plunges, pressing down upon the land with a heavier, more profound chill. The cold settles into the bone of the earth, freezing every blade of grass into a delicate glass needle. The mammoths shift closer together, their dark shapes blurring against the gathering dusk. The wind lowers its voice, softening into a steady, soothing whisper that blows across the vast, empty spaces. The saber-toothed cat remains in the shadows, waiting for the precise moment when the light completely surrenders to the night. It is a creature born of this icy kingdom, perfectly matched to its beauty, its hardship, and its quiet, timeless rhythm. As the pale twilight turns to deep blue, and the first bright stars begin to pierce the velvet dome of the Ice Age sky, the shadow in the grass slowly begins to flow forward, silent as a thought, stepping out into the cold expanse of the forgotten world. Chapter 2: The Fangs. In the twilight of the Pleistocene, beneath a sky brimming with cold, silver stars, nature forged something breathtaking, something crafted with a quiet, undeniable precision. To understand the hunter that shadows the edges of the Mammoth steppe, one must look closely at the extraordinary instruments that gave this ghost of the Ice Age its name. Beyond the massive shoulders and the dense, coiled power of its limbs, the true wonder of Smilodon fatalis slumbers within its jaw, a quiet marvel of biological perfection suspended in the stillness of the night. Imagine holding in your mind's eye the sweeping curve of those upper canines, long and pale as carved ivory, extending downward like twin scimitars sculpted by millennia of adaptation. They were not heavy, round pegs designed for crushing bone, nor were they built for holding fast to a thrashing, panic-stricken victim. They were something far more refined. These fangs were flattened laterally, compressed like double-edged blades, curving gently back toward the throat with delicate, fine serrations lining their edges. Like the serrated leaf of an ancient willow, these tiny, microscopic ridges were engineered to glide effortlessly through soft tissue, turning a single downward stroke into an instrument of immediate, quiet resolution. For a young cat growing up in the shadowy groves of spruce and pine, these great weapons were a long, patient investment. In the first months of life, a cub bore modest milk teeth, small and functional enough to allow it to feed beside its mother. But deep within the bone of the upper jaw, locked inside dark sockets that extended far up toward the nasal passages, the permanent sabers were slowly taking shape. Month after month, year after year, layer upon layer of ivory and dense enamel were laid down in secret. The cat carried these burgeoning blades like hidden treasure, nursing them through a long youth until they descended fully into the light, reaching lengths that dwarfed those of any living hunter before or since. They were fragile while growing, hollowed at the core like young bamboo, only solidifying into dense, stone-hard ivory as the cat reached the fullness of its adult power. Because these ivory blades were so long, so slender, and so specialized, nature had to reinvent the very architecture of the skull to accommodate them. A modern lion opens its mouth with a modest, familiar yawn, but Smilodon belonged to an entirely different lineage of mechanics. To clear the sweeping tips of its elongated teeth, the cat could drop its lower jaw downward until its gape opened extraordinarily wide, an astonishing, yawning arc that allowed the lower jaw to drop nearly perpendicular to its head. The heavy muscles attached to the skull were repositioned, shifting their angle of pull so that even at the very peak of this wide opening, the jaw retained a smooth, controlled, and fluid leverage. It was a mechanism designed not for a crushing, prolonged grip, but for a single, impeccably placed motion. Picture the scene unfolding in slow motion under the pale moonlight. The cat has crept through the frosted ryegrass, its heavy, muscular forelimbs pinning a massive prey animal to the hard, frozen earth. The hunter does not bite wildly, nor does it waste its strength attempting to snap through thick ribs or solid limbs, which could risk fracturing its precious razor-thin blades. Instead, with absolute composure and total stillness, the cat uses its enormous physical weight to immobilize the target, anchoring it completely to the ground. Then, the jaw opens wide, a smooth and breathtaking expansion. The long, ivory blades are brought directly above the soft, exposed column of the throat or the tender expanse of the underbelly. With a single, heavy, downward drive powered not just by the jaws, but by the massive, powerful neck muscles that anchored into the back of the skull, the fangs sink deep. The serrated edges glide through, severing the major vessels in an instant. There is no prolonged struggle, no exhausting ordeal across miles of snowy plain. Within moments, the pressure releases, the rapid heartbeat slows, and a deep, final quiet washes over the snowfield. It was a death crafted for efficiency, a quiet mercy born of cold calculation. By minimizing the time spent in conflict with a large, dangerous herbivore, the cat preserved its own body, protecting those magnificent, irreplaceable teeth from injury or shatter. Every curve, every ridge, every socket within the skull existed in perfect harmony to support this single, exquisite technique. Chapter 3. Built for the kill. As the night deepens and the world outside grows quietly still, let your mind rest in the vast, shadowed realm of the Ice Age. Imagine the cold air drifting across the golden grasses of the Pleistocene steppe, carrying with it the quiet hush of ancient centuries. In this third chapter, titled Built for the Kill, we step closer into the shadow of Smilodon fatalis to examine not just its famed fangs, but the rest of this extraordinary predator, a creature sculpted from bone and muscle for one single, uncompromising purpose. When we picture a big cat in our mind's eye today, we often think of sleek grace, long fluid lines, and incredible speed. We envision the cheetah, light as a whisper, skimming across dusty plains like a thrown spear, its long, flexible spine flexing in rhythm with an aerodynamic tail that acts as a rudder in the wind. Or we think of the African lion, tall and rangy, capable of bounding across 100-yard stretches of savanna in pursuit of swift gazelles and zebras. But Smilodon was engineered on an entirely different philosophy of nature. It was not built to chase. It was built to overwhelm. To look upon the skeleton and muscle architecture of Smilodon is to behold a heavy, immovable anchor in a landscape of giants. Weighing as much as a large male lion, and often considerably more, it compressed all of that immense mass into a shorter, stockier, and dramatically denser frame. Where modern cats are long and lithe, Smilodon was thick and compact, built more like a bear clothed in the skin of a panther. Its back was broad and rigid, its ribcage deep and barrel-chested, housing a heart and lungs built for short, explosive bursts of raw energy rather than long-distance endurance. Perhaps the most telling clue to its lifestyle lies at the very back of its body, a short, bobbed tail, barely reaching past its hocks. In the family of cats, the tail is rarely decorative. For predators that run, leap, and turn at high velocity, a long, heavy tail provides essential balance, shifting momentum mid-air or mid-stride to keep the animal upright during a high-speed pursuit. Smilodon's stubby tail reveals an undeniable truth about its world. This cat never engaged in long, breathless chases across the frozen plains. It had no need for a high-speed rudder, because by the time its prey realized the danger was there, the distance between them had already closed to zero. Instead of speed, nature gifted Smilodon with unmatched physical leverage. The forelimbs of this ancient predator were nothing short of extraordinary. The bones of its front legs, the humerus, the radius, and the ulna were exceptionally thick and dense, with walls of bone far heavier than those of any modern feline. Attached to these massive bones were dense knots of muscle that wrapped across its shoulders and chest, giving the cat a formidable, broad-shouldered profile. These arms were built not merely for running, but for grappling. They were precision wrestling instruments, designed to pin hundreds of pounds of thrashing muscle to the cold ground. This heavy, powerful upper body was the vital partner to the cat's delicate saber teeth. Because those long blade-like canines were thin and vulnerable to snapping if subjected to side-to-side twisting, Smilodon could never afford to bite a struggling, upright animal. A single wild kick from a bison or a violent wrench of a horse's neck could fracture those irreplaceable ivory weapons. Therefore, the hunt was decided before the jaws ever opened. Smilodon would lie in wait within the tall, frosted grasses or behind the cover of scrub willow, waiting for a vulnerable animal to step within a few yards. Then came a sudden, devastating leap, an explosion of force over a breadth of distance. With its massive forelegs, armed with long, retractile claws, Smilodon would throw its entire body weight onto its prey, pulling the animal down into the snow and locking it in an iron embrace. Its heavy shoulder girdle and thick wrists allowed it to twist and immobilize the neck and chest of creatures twice its size, neutralizing their kicking legs and thrashing horns. Only when the victim was held completely rigid, pinned securely against the frozen earth, would the cat lower its head, open its jaws to that astonishing wide gape, and deliver the silent, precise strike to the throat. Everything about Smilodon was a masterclass in close-range power, a creature designed not for the thrill of the hunt, but for the absolute certainty of the capture. It was a phantom built for stillness, blending into the shadows until the exact fraction of a second when force was required, only to return once more to the quiet, serene calm of the ancient night. Chapter 4. Night Sight. To human ears, the Ice Age night might seem silent, a deep and unbroken void stretching beneath the winter stars. But to Smilodon, the darkness is alive with 1,000 soft signals, woven together into a rich and detailed landscape of sound, scent, and shadow. Long before the first pale ray of dawn touches the eastern horizon, the cat awakens from its slumber, its senses expanding quietly into the cool night air, like ripples spreading across a calm pool of water. In the faint starlight, the cat's pupils dilate, expanding into wide, dark pools that drink in every stray particle of ambient light. Deep within its eyes, lies a mirror-like layer of specialized tissue, a biological amplifier that catches the faint glow of the stars and reflects it back through the retina a second time. Through these forward-facing eyes, the pitch-black prairie is transformed into a world of clear, silver-toned clarity. The endless ocean of dormant grass is no longer an invisible shadow, but a textured sea of pale gray and slate, where every frozen blade, every curve of a snow-drifted ridge, and every gentle dip in the earth is mapped with absolute binocular precision. To look through the eyes of the hunter is to see the night not as a veil, but as a lens that clarifies every subtle movement across the wide world. Where light is faint, other senses reach out to fill the silence. Along the cat's muzzle, long, sensitive whiskers extend into the night, acting as delicate antennae tuned to the gentlest currents of the air. As the cold breeze rolls off the distant glaciers, it carries a silent story recorded in scent and pressure. The whiskers register the softest shift in wind direction, warning the cat of a coming drop in temperature or reading the air currents shaped by a nearby ridge of stone. A subtle twitch of a single whisker reveals the density of the brush ahead, allowing the cat to slip through dense scrub without brushing a single twig or making a sound. High above its golden brow, the cat's ears pivot independently, turning like sensitive acoustic dishes toward the faintest whispers of the steppe. The sensory world of the predator is filled with a low, continuous chorus of life. Miles away, the heavy, rhythmic breathing of a resting mammoth herd creates a deep, resonant pulse in the air. Closer by, the soft crunch of a frozen twig under the shifting weight of a wild horse sounds as distinct as a bell ringing in an empty cathedral. Even the tiny, muffled rustle of a lemming moving beneath a crust of dry snow is captured, identified, and catalogued in the quiet architecture of the cat's mind. It is in the final, quiet hour before dawn, the time when the world rests in its deepest, most vulnerable sleep, that the hunt truly begins. The sky overhead has shifted from pitch black to a deep, velvety indigo, though the sun remains far below the edge of the earth. Across a low valley, a small herd of Pleistocene horses stands huddled together against the cold, their heads drooping, their breath rising in slow, synchronized plumes of white steam. They are drowsy, resting their weight on weary legs after a long night of grazing through the hard snow. Out of the deep shadows at the base of the ridge, the saber-toothed cat begins to move. It does not run, nor does it rush. It flows across the frozen ground like a shadow sliding over stone, effortless and devoid of substance. Its broad padded paws sink into the snow with soft, soundless care, spreading its weight so perfectly that not a single frozen crust cracks beneath its feet. Every step is deliberate, guided by the acute touch of its paw pads and the silent feedback of its whiskers. With its body held low to the earth, the cat closes the distance step by silent step. Its gaze never strays from the dark outlines of the resting herd. In the dim, silver atmosphere, every muscle in the cat's broad shoulders moves with a slow, fluid rhythm, completely absorbed in the singular intent of the stalk. It becomes a ghost woven into the frost, an ancient force moving silently through the dark, waiting for that fleeting moment when the night surrenders to the grey edge of dawn. As the absolute dark begins to soften, and the very first pale line of morning light whispers across the eastern horizon, the dark silhouettes of the herd slowly begin to take form in the cool grey mist, resting just a few short paces away. Chapter 5. Tracking the Mammoth. Allow the quiet rhythm of your breathing to steady you, sinking deeper into the soft darkness of the room. As the stillness settles over your mind, imagine the vast open sky of the ancient Pleistocene, stretching out into the quiet reaches of time. In this 5th chapter, titled Tracking the Mammoth, we enter the long, patient shadow of a hunt that spans days, a quiet war of endurance waged across miles of frozen steppe between two true titans of the Ice Age. To hunt a creature as monumental as a mammoth was beyond the strength of any single predator, no matter how formidable its broad shoulders or devastating its ivory fangs. A fully grown Columbian mammoth stood high above the frozen earth, a moving mountain of muscle, dense fur, and sweeping tusks capable of tossing a predator aside with effortless force. For a solitary Smilodon, attacking such a creature would be foolish and swift in its consequences. But Smilodon fatalis was not always a lone wanderer of the frost. In the quiet depths of the Ice Age, these great cats lived, moved, and hunted as a collective unit, a pride bound by shared purpose, silent communication, and deep social bonds. The journey begins miles away from where the strike will finally land. For 3 full cycles of sun and cold starlight, the pride has shadowed the giant herd across the sweeping, wind-carved plains. They do not hurry. They move along the elevated ridges and shallow gullies, keeping the wind in their faces, remaining just beyond the periphery of the herd's watchful eyes. The tracking is a quiet art of reading subtle signs written upon the snow and grass. Every step the giant herd takes leaves a story behind. The cats read the deep, rounded impressions pressed into the hard earth. They note the spacing between footprints, calculating the rhythm and pace of the moving giants. Where a healthy mammoth steps with steady, even weight, an injured or weary animal leaves a trailing edge, a slight drag in the snow, where a heavy hind leg hesitates, or a shallow depth in the impression that betrays a shifted center of gravity. As the cold wind drifts across the steppe, it brings more than physical tracks. It carries the scent of life and vulnerability. In the icy air, the pride's keen sense of smell catches the faintest metallic tang, the faint, quiet whisper of dried blood from an old wound, or the sharp scent of stress rising from a young calf struggling to keep pace with the towering elders. The cats process these cues with patient intelligence, identifying the single thread of weakness in a loom of formidable strength. Around this single vulnerable member, the behavior of the mammoth herd subtly shifts. Mammoths are deeply social, intelligent beings. The matriarchs and older cows gather closely around a limping youth or an ailing herdmate, adjusting their pace, creating a protective circle of tusks and thick shoulders. They rumble low in their chests, a deep, subsonic vibration that travels through the earth, reassuring the weak and signaling vigilance to the rest. The cats feel these low vibrations in the pads of their paws, reading the rising tension within the herd. They know that as long as the giants remain united in a tight, impenetrable formation, no attack is possible. And so, the pride waits. Patience is the ultimate weapon of the pack hunter. Through the bitter freeze of the night, while the wind howls softly over the icy ridges, The cats crouch together in the lee of a rocky outcrop, sharing body heat, their breath mingling in gentle plumes of pale mist. They watch the distant silhouettes of the sleeping herd. They know that time, hunger, and the unforgiving terrain of the Ice Age are working alongside them. On the fourth morning, as a pale grey twilight washes over the frost, the opportunity finally presents itself. The herd is moving through a narrow, boulder-strewn pass where a frozen stream has carved a gully through the earth. The uneven ground breaks the tight defensive formation of the mammoths. As the massive matriarch steps down into the icy streambed, the young, lagging mammoth hesitates at the edge of the embankment, stepping slightly out of the protective shadow of its elders. In an instant, without a single roar or audible command, the pride responds. A silent signal passes between the cats, a shift in posture, a subtle widening of golden eyes, a quiet tension running through 3,000 pounds of collective feline muscle. They divide seamlessly, executing a strategy honed over generations. Two older females move wide along the upper rim of the gully, intentionally catching the breeze so their scent reaches the nose of the matriarch. The mammoth herd shifts nervously, their giant heads turning toward the wind, their attention drawn away from the rear. Meanwhile, the strongest males and youngest hunters fan out through the tall, frosted ryegrass behind the lagging youth, staying low, flat against the hard ground. Step by silent step, the pride closes the distance. They crawl on their bellies, their tawny coats blending perfectly with the pale yellow stems and blue frost. Every movement is fluid, restrained, and perfectly synchronized. When one cat pauses, every cat pauses, becoming as still as the boulders scattered across the ridge. The distance shrinks from 50 yards to 30 to 20. Now, the young mammoth stands at the edge of the snowy slope, separated from the herd by mere paces, completely unaware of the invisible circle that has tightened around it. The cats are in position, spread out in a deadly arc, their massive shoulders coiled like steel springs, their heavy forelimbs anchored to the frozen soil, their long, serrated saber teeth hidden just behind tense, golden lips. Every breath is held in total stillness. Every eye is locked onto the target. The wind drops to a faint, suspended whisper, and the world holds its breath as the edge of dawn hangs in absolute, heart-stopping silence. Chapter 6. The Ambush. The morning air holds its breath, suspending the entire ancient world in a single, fragile second of absolute stillness. The pale grey sky stretches out, cold and vast, over the golden expanse of the frosted steppe. Below, in the quiet shadow of the ravine, time itself seems to slow to the gentle rhythm of a heartbeat, resting upon the edge of a blade. The young mammoth stands on the snow-dusted slope, its thick fur matted with ice, its great dark eyes gazing toward the rest of the herd moving slowly through the valley floor. It is only a few strides away from the warmth and security of its elders, yet in the quiet mechanics of the Pleistocene, those few strides are an insurmountable distance. Out of the frosted ryegrass, the world erupts into movement. There is no warning howl, no rustle of dry leaves, no shift in the wind to give voice to the danger. There is only the immediate, explosive translation of stillness into devastating, irresistible kinetic force. The great cat launches itself from the frozen earth, a burst of tawny fur, dense muscle, and unyielding purpose shattering the quiet morning air. In a single, fluid bound, the distance between shadow and prey vanishes entirely. The animal does not run in the traditional sense. It propels its vast mass across the earth like a heavy iron weight thrown with absolute precision, its heavy paws striking the snow with a muffled, rhythmic thunder. For the young mammoth, the universe contracts instantly into a sudden, overwhelming weight pressing against its flank. The surprise is complete, a sharp fracture in the peaceful routine of the morning. As the cat collides with the young giant, the sheer momentum of the blow sends a tremor through the frozen ground. Broad, heavily muscled forelimbs, thick as the trunks of young trees, wrap around the shoulders and neck of the mammoth. Long, curved claws extend from their sheaths, anchoring deep into thick hide and wool, binding the two ancient lives together in a violent, intimate embrace. The cat does not attempt to bring the mammoth down through exhaustion or pursuit. It uses its vast, low center of gravity to pull, to twist, to leverage the heavy body of its prey against the unyielding surface of the earth. From the perspective of the cat, every instinct honed over thousands of generations narrows down to this singular, exquisite sequence of mechanical actions. The cat feels the heavy surge of the mammoth's muscles beneath its grip, the wild, frantic shifting of weight as the young giant tries to stay upright. But the cat's broad shoulders and massive chest are built for this exact struggle. It plants its strong hind legs into the frozen soil, driving its hips downward, converting its full weight into a powerful, twisting anchor. The world becomes a symphony of physical tension, the strain of tendons, the rasp of heavy breath in the cold air, the sharp scent of torn soil and pine resin rising from the disturbed ground. The struggle is brief, concentrated, and absolute. The young mammoth, off balance and overwhelmed by the sudden, focused weight, loses its footing on the slick, icy slope. With a heavy, resonant thud that vibrates through the bedrock of the valley, the young giant crashes sideways into the snowbank. The air rushes from its lungs in a thick, white cloud of steam that lingers in the frigid morning light. Before the fallen animal can attempt to scramble back to its feet, before its heavy legs can find purchase on the slippery earth, the great cat shifts its position with astonishing, fluid speed, pinning the neck and chest of the mammoth beneath the crushing weight of its forearms. Now comes the moment for which the entire architecture of the hunter was forged. Held completely motionless against the hard earth, the mammoth is helpless to shift its body or throw its heavy head. The cat raises its heavy skull, its golden eyes calm and unblinking, utterly devoid of malice or excitement, focused entirely on the biological imperative of the moment. The lower jaw drops down, extending in that extraordinary, wide arc that clears the long, pale ivory sabers from the lower lip. The jaws open so wide that the mechanics of the skull seem almost mythic, a biological marvel crafted by the slow, patient hands of Ice Age millennia with deliberate, quiet precision. The cat lowers its head over the exposed column of the throat. There is no wild tearing, no indecisive biting. Powered by the thick, dense muscle groups running along its neck and spine, the cat drives the flattened, serrated blades downward. The long ivory canines glide smoothly through the thick hide and soft tissues, finding the vital pathways with absolute, devastating accuracy. The serrated edges do their quiet, merciful work, bringing a swift and decisive end to the struggle. A profound hush falls back over the ravine. The violent energy that filled the air just moments before dissipates into the vast, empty expanse of the steppe, absorbed by the snow, the stone, and the pale morning sky. The young mammoth grows still, its heavy breathing slowing, turning into gentle, fading puffs of white mist that grow smaller and smaller until they merge completely with the cold, quiet air. There is no prolonged agony, no drawn-out battle across the plains, only the swift, quiet transition from life to rest, executed with the cold efficiency of a world where every calorie of energy is precious. The great cat remains in place for a long time, its heavy forelimbs still resting on the quiet form beneath it, its broad chest heaving as it catches its breath. Great clouds of steam billow from its nostrils, swirling around its golden face and dusting its long whiskers with tiny crystals of frost. Its golden eyes gaze out across the valley, serene and distant, watching the remainder of the mammoth herd continue their slow march into the grey light of the dawn. The matriarch turns her massive head for a brief moment, her dark eyes looking back toward the ravine, before she turns again to lead her family onward, obeying the ancient, unwritten laws of the frozen world. Slowly, out of the tall, frost-dusted grass at the edges of the gully, other shadows begin to detach themselves from the landscape. The rest of the pride emerges into the open. They step softly through the snow, their movements unhurried, their tawny coats blending with the pale winter light. They gather around the fallen giant, moving with a quiet, solemn familiarity. There are no triumphant roars, no displays of dominance or wild celebration. There is only the quiet gathering of a family bound by the shared burden of survival in a land of ice and stone. The wind sweeps down from the distant glaciers, whispering through the dry grass, smoothing over the churned snow and scattered tracks left in the earth. It cleanses the air, carrying away the heat of the struggle and leaving behind only the pure, crisp scent of frost and winter sage. The pale sun finally breaks over the eastern horizon, painting the vast, silent steppe in shades of gold, rose, and soft lavender. The ancient drama of the hunt is complete, a single quiet note in the grand, unending song of the Ice Age, repeating as it has for 10,000 seasons, resting peacefully under the timeless expanse of the pale sky. Chapter 7. After the Kill. The quiet that settles over the frozen valley after a hunt is not an empty space, but a heavy, reverent hush that seems to seep straight from the Ice Age earth itself. As the pulse of the great mammoth fades into the chill, a strange and peaceful stillness descends upon the snow-swept gully. The violent energy that hung so thick in the frigid morning air dissolves, leaving behind a world bathed in the soft ethereal hues of a pale winter dawn. From the dark stillness of the carcass, a plume of thick white steam rises toward the velvet sky, twisting like a slow ghost in the crisp breeze. The rich, metallic scent of life mingles with the sharp, clean perfume of winter sage and frozen earth. In the snow, dark crimson blooms expand, pooling around the resting giant and freezing quickly into glossy, ruby ice. Every breath taken in this sharp air feels ancient and sacred, a reminder of the quiet, delicate dance between survival and rest that governs this wild, forgotten realm. Now, as the adrenaline recedes like a falling tide, the true life of the pride begins to unfold. There is no chaotic scramble, no desperate fighting among these ancient companions. Instead, the feeding occurs with a calm, deeply ingrained order that reflects the quiet bonds holding the group together. The large males and the lead hunters, those who bore the crushing weight of the struggle and risked their lives against heavy ivory, are the first to lower their massive heads. Their broad shoulders, still dusting with fine frost and glistening with sweat, relax into the cold ground with incredible precision, using their shorter, sharp incisors rather than their delicate, sword-like canines. They strip away the outer hide, reaching the rich, life-sustaining energy beneath. As they feed, the younger cats and the nursing mothers sit quietly nearby in a patient arc. They do not pace frantically or growl in anger. They wait with the quiet trust of creatures who know that the bounty of a mammoth is vast enough to sustain them all. In this communal ritual, food is shared, strength is restored, and the survival of the pride is woven just a little tighter against the harsh expanse of the winter. Yet, a kill of this magnitude never remains a secret for long in the open stretches of the Mammoth steppe. Beyond the immediate circle of golden fur, the landscape begins to wake with quiet, watchful shadows. High above, suspended against the pale violet sky, broad-winged condors circle on lazy, invisible air currents, their sharp eyes taking in every detail of the snowfield below. On the stark, skeletal branches of a stunted willow tree, ravens gather like dark, whispering leaves, their sleek feathers glinting in the pale light, waiting for their chance to dart in for a fleeting meal. Farther out, at the edge of the tall, frosted ryegrass, other silhouettes emerge from the mist. A pack of dire wolves stands in a silent line, their heavy, broad-skulled heads held low, their pale eyes reflecting the morning sun. They move with cautious, measured steps, keeping a respectful distance from the powerful hunters. They know the strength of those broad shoulders and the quick, decisive reach of the cat's heavy limbs. And somewhere farther off, moving slowly across a distant snowy ridge, the massive, solitary form of a giant short-faced bear pauses, its high shoulders catching the wind as it tests the air, weighing the effort of a contest against the quiet patience of waiting its turn. For now, the pride pays little mind to the gathering audience at the perimeter. They feed until their heavy bellies are full, until the deep, hollow ache of days spent tracking through the bitter frost is completely forgotten. As the sun climbs just a little higher, a cool silver coin hanging low in the vast sky, the cats slowly drift away from the carcass, one by one. Their movements are heavy, slow, and sated, every muscle softening in the luxurious warmth of a full meal. They gather in a sheltered dip of the land, nestled beneath the lee of a high stone overhang that shields them from the biting wind. Here, the snow has been swept away, leaving a dry, hard bed of earth and pale winter moss. Without hesitation, the cats collapse together into a single dense pile of tawny fur, intertwining their heavy limbs and resting their massive, blocky heads upon one another's flanks. The social warmth of the pride becomes a fortress against the encroaching cold. The great males, their broad faces resting softly on their paws, let out deep, rumbling sighs that vibrate through the bodies of the younger cubs tucked safely in the center of the huddle. They lick the frost from each other's coats with long, rhythmic strokes, a soothing, repetitive ritual that lulls the entire group into a state of profound, undisturbed tranquility. Their long saber teeth, so lethal and precise in the heat of the dawn, are now safely tucked away beneath soft, warm lips, resting harmlessly against the fur of their kin. As the afternoon light softly fades, giving way to the long, deep shadows of the Ice Age twilight, the world outside their shelter grows impossibly quiet. The wind drops to a barely audible whisper, drifting softly over the vast, white plains. The cold deepens, pressing hard against the earth, freezing the snow into a glittering crust of diamond dust. High above, in the clear, thin atmosphere, the first brilliant stars begin to ignite, burning with a cold, fierce light over an unbroken wilderness that stretches from horizon to horizon, nested together in the dark, bathed in the quiet warmth of their shared life. The saber-toothed cats sleep deeply and without fear. Their slow, steady breathing rises in a unified rhythm, a soft cadence of life pulsing steadily at the heart of a frozen world. Chapter 8: Pride and Territory. We turn our gaze away from the solitary stillness of the stalk to wander deeper into the heart of the home, into the intricate social tapestry of the saber-toothed cat. In the modern world, we often picture the great hunters of the wild as lonely wanderers, solitary spirits moving through the dark, like single leaves carried on a cold wind. The solitary leopard slumbers alone in the high branches. The solitary tiger patrols its jungle domain in solitude, and the solitary jaguar slips silently through the river mists without a companion. But here, in the harsh and beautiful expanse of the ancient North American steppe, Smilodon fatalis chose a different path toward survival. To endure a land ruled by megafauna, where mammoths walked like mountains and giant sloths shook the earth, this magnificent predator discovered that its greatest strength lay not merely in muscle or ivory, but in the enduring bond of the group. Imagine a territory that spans hundreds of square miles of wind-carved plains, river valleys choked with ancient ice, and high, rocky bluffs that overlook vast oceans of golden ryegrass. This is the domain of the pride, a kingdom mapped not by fences or borders, but by the shared memories, scents, and voices of a family bound together across generations. The territory is a living entity, an expanse of earth imbued with the very presence of the pack. Along the edges of this vast realm, where the golden steppe meets the shadows of neighboring hunting grounds, the cats leave their silent, unmistakable declarations of ownership. On a cold afternoon, as the pale sun casts long violet shadows across the frozen crust of the earth, a massive male moves along the perimeter of the territory. His walk is slow, heavy, and deliberate, each step pressing deeply into the hard snow. He pauses beside an ancient, wind-stunted pine, its bark worn smooth by years of winter storms. With his broad, heavily muscled shoulders, he rubs his face against the dark wood, depositing scent from the glands along his cheeks and jaw, a sweet, musk-laden signature that tells every passing wind who rules these plains. He rises on his hind legs, extending his massive forelimbs to drag his heavy, retracted claws down the trunk, leaving deep, parallel furrows in the wood, a visual mark etched high upon the bark to announce his imposing stature to any wandering stranger. This territory is more than just a hunting ground. It is a sanctuary woven together by affection, shared warmth, and quiet hierarchy. Within the inner circle of the pride's domain, away from the tension of the borders, the social life of Smilodon unfolds with a surprising, gentle tenderness. Here, under the shelter of an overhanging limestone bluff, the family rests together as the afternoon light fades into lavender. Older females, their tawny coats marked with the faded scars of past hunts, lie side by side, their long legs intertwined. They take turns grooming one another, using their broad, rough tongues to lick away the frost and dust from hard-to-reach places behind the ears and along the spine. Nearby, young cubs, their tiny milk canines, just beginning to give way to the burgeoning sockets of their permanent teeth, tumble clumsily over the sleeping form of a great male. They pounce on his short, bobbed tail, swatting at his paws with soft, rounded pads. The massive cat does not growl in anger. He merely lifts his broad head, letting out a soft, rhythmic chuffing sound, a low, vibrating exhalation of breath that signals calm and affection. It is a language of soft huffs, gentle head rubs, and quiet, resonant purrs that rumble deep within their broad chests, creating an atmosphere of profound safety amid an unforgiving world. Yet, this peaceful sanctuary exists only because the borders of the territory are fiercely defended. The edges of the domain are dynamic, constantly tested by rival prides searching for richer hunting grounds or wandering males seeking to establish their own legacy. When a neighboring pride drifts too close to the boundary, guided by the scent of a recent kill or the desperate need for shelter, the silent peace of the steppe gives way to a tense, dramatic confrontation. The air changes before the rivals ever see one another. A cold wind carrying an unfamiliar scent sweeps through the valley, and instantly, every head in the pride lifts. The quiet purring stops. Golden eyes widen, catching the dim light, and the gentle atmosphere vanishes, replaced by a sharp, collective alertness. The lead cats rise in unison, their broad chests expanding as they inhale the telling air. They do not rush blindly forward. They move together in a formidable, synchronized line, stepping out from the cover of the rocks to face the intrusion. At the border of the territory, where a frozen creek bed divides the high ridge, the two rival groups meet. The space between them is charged with an electric, suspended tension. They do not immediately throw themselves into violent conflict. A fight between creatures armed with such devastating power carries a terrible cost for both sides. Instead, the battle begins with a majestic display of vocal force and body language, an ancient theater of strength designed to resolve the dispute without bloodshed if possible. The great lead male steps forward to the edge of the embankment. He plants his thick forelegs wide into the snow, lowers his heavy head, and pulls cold air deep into his lungs. Then comes the voice of the saber-tooth, a sound that has been silent on this earth for 10,000 years. It is not the high, piercing roar of a tiger, nor the flat, chest-heavy roar of a modern lion, but a deep, resonant, baritone rumble that begins in the very depths of his chest and rolls out across the valley like distant thunder. It is a sound so low, so immensely powerful, that it vibrates through the frozen soil, causing the ice on the creek bed to hum and the air itself to tremble. From across the creek, the rival male answers, his own booming voice rising to meet the challenge. The valley becomes an amphitheater of sound, an ancient dialogue of rumbles, deep guttural growls, and sharp, explosive huffs that echo off the limestone cliffs. The cats arch their backs, raising the thick fur along their spines to make their massive frames appear even larger against the pale sky. They bare their teeth, dropping their lower jaws to reveal the full, terrifying length of those ivory blades, gleaming like polished stone in the twilight. For a long, heart-stopping moment, the confrontation hangs in the balance. A single misstep, a single aggressive surge could trigger a clash of shoulders, claws, and lethal teeth. But the display of unity and overwhelming strength from the resident pride is absolute. Sensing the unyielding resolve of the territory's guardians, the rival pride slowly begins to give ground. They step backward with careful, deliberate slowness, keeping their eyes locked on the resident cats, refusing to show their backs until a safe distance has been established. Gradually, the intruders melt back into the grey mist of the outer plains, leaving the border secure once again. As the echoes of the vocal duel fade into the vast silence of the night, the adrenaline that surged through the pride slowly ebbs away. The lead male lets out one final, quiet chuff, a reassuring signal that danger has passed. The pride turns back toward the heart of their domain, stepping softly through the snow as the sky transforms into a deep, velvety indigo. They return to their favored resting place beneath the high cliff, where the earth remains dry and shielded from the rising night wind. The confrontation at the border has strengthened their collective bond, drawing them even closer together in the quiet sanctuary of their home. One by one, the great cats collapse onto the soft, frost-dusted ground, sinking into positions of deep, effortless rest. The large male lies on his side, his heavy, muscular forelimbs stretched out, his broad head resting upon the soft flank of an older female. The cubs nestle safely into the warm center of the huddle, protected from the biting chill by a wall of dense, tawny fur. Around them, the cold air settles heavily over the Pleistocene landscape, pressing down upon the endless grasslands and the frozen rivers. Every breath taken by the sleeping pride rises into the still, dark air in slow, synchronized clouds of white steam, hovering for a moment above the huddle before floating softly up toward the stars. High above, the vast Ice Age sky burns with a cold, magnificent clarity, casting a gentle silver light over the sleeping guardians of the steppe, locked in a deep and timeless peace as the ancient world turns slowly beneath the quiet night. Chapter 9. Raising Cubs. Deep inside a dry cavern of limestone, shielded from the relentless, biting wind that roars over the steppe, the temperature shifts. The biting chill gives way to a lingering quiet warmth, rich with the musk of fur and soft earth. Here, tucked far away from the icy reach of winter storms and the watchful eyes of wandering scavengers, a mother rests upon a bed of dry moss and soft, crushed fern leaves. Beside her, nestled against the deep, rhythmic rise and fall of her broad chest, lie 3 tiny newborn cubs. They are small, fragile, and almost weightless, hardly larger than tiny kittens, born blind and helpless into a colossal, dangerous world. In an environment defined by crushing frost and towering giants, the survival of these tiny lives is a quiet miracle of devotion and care. The mother wraps her heavy body around them, forming a thick, golden crescent of dense fur that seals out the drafty night air. Her warmth is vast and enveloping, an impenetrable fortress against the freezing dark. In these first weeks of life, her world narrows down to this single, shadowy space. She licks their tiny, dark fur with long, gentle strokes of her tongue, her steady breathing vibrating through the cavern floor like a soothing, continuous lullaby. Outside, the Ice Age presses down with all its unyielding weight, but here, inside the den, there is only safety, heat, and the quiet, complete universe of a mother and her young. As the weeks drift slowly into months, the cubs open their eyes to the soft, golden light filtering through the mouth of the cave. Their first steps are clumsy, uncertain tumbles across the smooth stone, their tiny paws sliding over the cold earth. At this early stage of life, their mouths bear no trace of the iconic weapons that define their kind. Instead of the great, sweeping scimitars of their elders, the cubs possess small, modest milk teeth, simple and functional, built only for nursing and nipping playfully at their siblings' ears. Deep within the bone of their upper jaws, locked away in dark, growing sockets, the permanent saber teeth are still only silent seeds of ivory, slowly taking shape over long years of patient youth. Because these great weapons take so long to develop, growing far slower than the teeth of any modern predator, a young saber-toothed cat cannot simply step out onto the plain and hunt for itself at an early age. They are children of the pride for a long time, dependent upon the patience, protection, and shared food of the adult family for years before their own jaws are ready to face the wild. This prolonged childhood creates a rich, complex bond between the mother and her offspring, a long season of learning and quiet companionship. In the faint light of late afternoon, just outside the threshold of the den, the cavern comes alive with the gentle theater of childhood. The cubs engage in endless games of play fighting, practicing the ancient movements of the hunt in soft, harmless miniature. One cub crouches behind a mossy rock, its golden eyes wide, its tiny tail twitching with intense focus, before launching itself in a soft, clumsy pounce onto the back of its sibling. They roll together over the dry earth, swatting at each other with soft, rounded paws, learning how to balance their weight, how to pin a target, and how to use their shoulders with leverage and control. The mother lies nearby, her massive head resting peacefully upon her paws, watching their games with calm, unblinking patience. Occasionally, a bold cub will stalk her flicking tail, launching a heroic assault on the twitching tip. Rather than pulling away, she moves it just enough to challenge them, letting out a soft, low, chuffing sound that encourages their play. When their tumbling becomes too wild, or when a sharp milk tooth presses a little too hard, she simply extends a broad, heavy forearm, gently pulling the unruly cub close to her chin, licking its head until the little one settles down into a warm, quiet purr. As the seasons turn and the cubs grow larger, their mother begins their first real lessons in the art of survival. On warm, quiet afternoons when the wind dies down, she leads them a short distance from the cave to a patch of sunlit brush where small ground squirrels and lemmings rustle beneath the dry leaves. She halts the cubs with a subtle shift in her posture, sinking low against the earth, demonstrating how to melt into the shadows without making a sound. The cubs mimic her, dropping their bellies to the dirt, trying their best to keep their tails still and their movements soft. When a tiny creature scurries out from beneath a root, one of the cubs lunges forward too fast, too loud, snapping its small jaws on empty air as the prey vanishes into a burrow. The cub stands frozen, looking around in confusion. The mother does not show frustration. She simply steps forward, touches her wet nose to the cub's forehead in a quiet gesture of reassurance, and lowers herself once again, showing them how to wait, how to listen, and how to let the rhythm of the environment guide their movement. Now, as the long, pale twilight surrenders to the deep blue of another Ice Age night, the family gathers back inside the safe, sheltering stone of the cavern. The cold air deepens outside, freezing the moisture on the rocks into delicate, sparkling crystals of frost. The wind whistles softly across the entrance of the cave, a distant, lonely whisper that only emphasizes the deep, secure comfort within. The cubs, exhausted from their long day of play and exploration, crawl over one another to press themselves tight against their mother's warm belly. Their tiny bellies are full, their small legs limp with heavy, satisfying fatigue. The mother turns her head, resting her heavy chin over the top of the pile, wrapping her long front legs around them to lock in every bit of heat. As they fall asleep, the cubs begin to purr a soft, high-pitched chorus that echoes gently off the smooth, dark stone walls. Their mother answers with her own deep, resonant purr, a heavy, rolling frequency that vibrates through the earth and wraps the tiny den in an impenetrable cocoon of peace. Inside this small, complete world, surrounded by love, warmth, and absolute safety, the future hunters of the frozen steppe drift off into long, quiet dreams, while high above, the ancient stars burn brightly over the dark and silent world. Chapter 10: Rivals, Dire Wolves, and Cave Lions. We return to the frozen plains of the Pleistocene, to a time when the night belonged to titans and the landscape was alive with shifting shadows. In this 10th chapter, titled Rivals, Dire Wolves, and Cave Lions, we explore the intricate, tension-filled web of life where Smilodon was not the only king of the Ice Age, but one master among many in a land crowded with legends. To walk through the ancient North American steppe 20,000 years ago was to traverse a kingdom rich in life, but defined by relentless competition. The sheer abundance of giant herbivores, the herds of mammoths, bison, horses, and ground sloths created an environment capable of supporting an astonishing array of massive apex predators. Yet, abundance did not mean ease. Nature maintained a delicate, constant pressure, drawing these great hunters into a perpetual dance of territorial boundary lines, shared kills, and subtle, silent negotiations. Imagine standing on a high, snow-dusted ridge as the sun dips below the horizon, watching the vast plains turn from gold to violet. Across this endless stage, different empires of predators moved simultaneously, each species sculpted by millions of seasons to exploit a specific niche, yet frequently crossing paths in the dark. Among these rivals were the dire wolves, creatures built for endurance, pack strategy, and unyielding persistence. Where the saber-toothed cat relied on explosive power, ambush, and close-quarters wrestling, the dire wolves operated like a single, wide-reaching net spread across the snowy plains. Larger and stockier than any modern wolf, with broader skulls and jaws engineered to crush through frozen bone, they hunted in large, tightly organized packs. A single dire wolf could never challenge a saber-toothed cat, but a pack of 15 or 20, moving as a synchronized chorus of dark fur and flashing teeth, was a formidable force. They could shadow a Smilodon pride for miles, waiting for the precise moment when the cats were tired after a heavy hunt, using their overwhelming numbers and persistent harassment tactics to contest a carcass and force a retreat. Higher on the open plains, roaming the wide, windswept plateaus where cover was scarce, lived another majestic rival, the American lion. Standing taller at the shoulder than Smilodon, with long cursorial legs built for impressive bounds across vast distances, the American lion was a titan of speed and size. While the saber-toothed cat favored the broken terrain, river valleys, and dense brush where it could stalk unseen within a few paces of its prey, the lion ruled the vast, open expanses. Yet, where these environments overlapped along the edges of forested riverbeds or at the borders of watering holes, the two species met face to face. These encounters were charged with a profound, quiet tension. Two grand evolutionary visions, the heavy grappler with its scimitars of ivory, and the tall, swift ruler of the wide plains, staring across expanse of frozen grass, measuring each other's strength in silence. And towering above them all, an absolute mountain of muscle and fur, was the giant, short-faced bear, moving across the landscape with a tall, pacing stride. This monster of the Ice Age was the ultimate kleptoparasite, a scavenger capable of detecting the scent of a fresh kill from tens of miles away on the cold wind. With long legs that allowed it to cover immense distances without fatigue, and a body mass that dwarfed even the largest male Smilodon, the short-faced bear did not need to hunt as frequently as the cats. It simply followed the scent of blood through the icy air, arriving at a kill site like an inevitable storm, using its sheer, terrifying size to intimidate other predators away from their hard-won meals. This was the complex, layered ecology of the Pleistocene, a delicate balance of resource partitioning, where species survive not by endless, senseless warfare, but by understanding when to fight, when to yield, and how to share the vast bounty of the frozen world. Picture the scene as the deep blue of night settles over the valley. At the base of a frozen riverbank lies the massive carcass of an ancient bison, brought down earlier in the evening by a small group of saber-toothed cats. The air is bitterly cold, so crisp that the stars above burn like hard, brilliant diamonds set in dark glass. Steam still rises softly from the fallen giant, carrying a rich, heavy scent that drifts out across the valley floor on the slow night breeze. The saber-toothed pride has fed, their heavy bellies full, but they have not yet abandoned the sight. Two broad-shouldered males and an older female lie close to the carcass, their glowing golden eyes fixed on the surrounding shadows. Out of the grey darkness at the edge of the tree line, the first rivals arrive. A pack of dire wolves emerges from the frosted willow scrub, moving in a silent, creeping crescent. Their heavy paws make a soft, crunching sound on the frozen crust of the snow. They do not charge, they fan out, keeping their distance, their low, guttural growls mixing with the whisper of the winter wind. They test the air, watching the posture of the cats, calculating the risk. Moments later, the snow crust groans under a heavier, more massive weight. The shadow of a solitary, short-faced bear rises from the dip of the riverbank, its high, humped shoulders catching the pale starlight. It stands on its hind legs for a brief, awe-inspiring second, towering over the landscape, testing the breeze, before dropping back to all fours with a muffled thud that vibrates through the frozen ground. Now, around a single carcass, in the heart of the Ice Age night, 3 different worlds converge. The cats sit on their haunches, broad chests expanding, letting out deep, chest-vibrating rumbles that warn the gatherers to keep their distance. The dire wolves circle at the perimeter, darting in to grab scattered morsels before retreating into the dark. The giant bear advances with slow, ponderous confidence, its heavy head swaying from side to side, making a low, huffing sound that demands space. It is not a chaotic battle, but a tense, highly choreographed negotiation, an ancient ritual written in the language of low growls, bristling fur, bared teeth, and subtle shifts in weight. Each predator knows the precise value of a meal, but each also knows the lethal cost of an injury in a world where a broken bone or a deep wound means quiet starvation. Respect is paid to strength, deference is given to size, and caution governs every move. Gradually, as the moon climbs higher into the velvet sky, a quiet order is established. The great cats, sated and composed, slowly step back from the remains, maintaining their dignity as they move toward the higher ground of the ridge. The giant bear steps into the central place, its massive frame shielding the meal, while the dire wolves wait patiently at the outer edge, knowing their turn will come before the first grey light of dawn. The scene resolves into a deep, peaceful stillness. The tension melts away into the vast, cold air of the Pleistocene night. Across the snowfields, the great predators eat, rest, and watch, each fulfilling its ancient role beneath the silent, eternal stars, wrapped in the quiet, timeless harmony of a frozen world. Chapter 11. The Warming. Imagine the quiet, subtle turning of a world that has known only ice for 100,000 years. For countless generations, the rhythm of life was written in frost, locked in the blue heart of glaciers that stretched across the northern continent like silent, frozen gods. But time, in its slow and patient dance, never stays still. Almost imperceptibly, the great cold begins to yield. It does not happen with a thunderous crash, nor with a sudden, violent upheaval, but as a gentle, inexorable softening, a slow breath of warmth spreading across the ancient earth, like a secret whispered from one horizon to the next. The winters, once long and unyielding, begin to lose their sharpest edge. The bitter gales that used to roar off the ice sheets grow softer, turning into cool breezes that carry the unfamiliar, sweet scent of damp earth and melting snow. Year after year, the sun lingers just a little higher in the sky, lingering a few moments longer before dipping below the edge of the world. The deep, perpetual permafrost, which held the roots of the Mammoth steppe in an iron grip for millennia, begins to thaw. Where vast oceans of pale golden grass once rippled under an enormous empty sky, new life begins to creep in. Stunted willows and dwarf birches give way to dense, sprawling forests of pine, spruce, and oak. The open steppe, the grand stage where giants once walked, begins to fragment, broken apart by rising rivers, expanding lakes, and thick, tangled woodlands. For the saber-toothed cat, this subtle shift in the tapestry of the earth is a silent, creeping transformation. Smilodon was sculpted by the Ice Age itself. Every fiber of its dense, muscular frame, every curve of its heavy forelimbs, and the exquisite, razor-sharp edge of its long ivory canines were engineered for a very specific world, a world of broad, open spaces, of massive, slow-moving prey that could be pinned to the hard earth in a sudden, explosive ambush. But as the endless grasslands shrink and transform into dense, tangled forests, the rules of survival begin to change beneath the cat's heavy paws. The great herds, too, are changing. The Columbian mammoths, the towering mastodons, and the giant ground sloths, the living foundations upon which the saber-toothed cat built its empire, find their ancient world shrinking. The specialized grasses and cold-adapted plants that sustained millions of massive bodies begin to vanish, replaced by vegetation that cannot support such colossal appetites. Slowly, quietly, the megafauna begins to thin. The endless seas of dark, woolly backs moving across the horizon become smaller scattered groups, then isolated families, drifting farther and farther apart across a changing landscape. The megafauna is not disappearing in a single dramatic moment, but fading like a long, slow echo drifting across an emptying valley. As the great beasts recede into memory, the hunter finds itself caught in the quiet shifting of time. A body built for overwhelming force, for wrestling multi-ton giants to the frozen soil, is less suited for chasing the smaller, swifter prey that now thrives in the expanding woodlands. The swift deer, the nimble elk, and the agile bison adapt to the new thickets, effortlessly outrunning a predator designed for short, explosive ambushes rather than long, breathless pursuits. The very perfection of Smilodon, its absolute, beautiful specialization, becomes a quiet burden in a world that no longer rewards the heavy weight of the ancient ways. And across this changing, sun-warmed earth, another shadow begins to fall. Moving through the dappled light of the new pine forests, stepping softly over the damp, mossy ground, comes a new kind of presence. They move on two legs, wrapped in the furs of the old world, carrying slender shafts of wood tipped with sharp, napped stone. They do not possess the broad shoulders of the cat, nor the crushing jaws of the bear, nor the long ivory blades of the hunter, yet they move with a quiet, collective intelligence that alters the balance of the wilderness wherever they walk. They read the tracks in the mud, they use fire to warm the deep night, and they hunt with a strategic, coordinated patience that echoes across the changing plains. The saber-toothed cat watches from the edge of the woodland, a golden shadow lingering in the tall, fading grass. The world it was born to rule is melting away, soft stream by soft stream, green shoot by green shoot, giving rise to a new age, an age of forests, of swifter prey, and of a new voice rising in the twilight. The ghost of the Ice Age still walks the ridge, its broad chest expanding as it inhales the warm, damp air of a changing earth, standing as a quiet monument to a cold, magnificent world that is slowly, peacefully passing into memory. Chapter 12. Last Hunt in the Snow. The air that moves across the valley no longer carries the sharp, pristine bite of the ancient ice, but the soft, unfamiliar warmth of a world remade. On a solitary ridge, where a single patch of pale, winter snow still lingers against the damp earth, an old saber-toothed cat walks alone. He is the last of his line, a majestic survivor of an epoch that has quietly slipped away into the mist of forgotten centuries. His tawny coat is silvered with age, scarred by the memory of 1,000 hunts, and his heavy shoulders carry the profound, quiet weight of a solitude deeper than the endless sky above. The great herds that once thundered across the golden steppe are gone, their monumental footprints washed away by rising spring rivers, leaving only the soft rustle of young oak leaves in the warming breeze. He steps onto the melting drift, his broad paws pressing into the soft, wet crystals that were once the unyielding foundation of his kingdom. In his chest, the heartbeat of the Ice Age still pulses slow, steady, and unhurried, surrounded by the silence of a landscape that no longer knows his name. He pauses at the edge of the woodland, his golden eyes scanning the clearing for a glimpse of the giant shadows he spent a lifetime trailing. But there are no mammoths rising like woolly mountains from the brush, no ancient bison gathering in the gully. The new world belongs to smaller, swifter lives that slip effortlessly through the dense green thickets, far beyond the reach of a body forged for overwhelming close-quarters force. Yet, even in this quiet stillness, he remains magnificent. His long ivory canines, polished by time and tempered by 1,000 winter nights, rest beneath soft lips, carrying the silent legacy of a biological masterwork that ruled a continent for millions of seasons. He does not grieve the world that was, nor does he fear the warmth that spreads across the valley. He simply accepts the gentle rhythm of the turning earth, fulfilling the ancient law of his kind until the very end, as the sun begins to climb over the eastern hills, casting a soft, golden light that feels warmer than any morning he has ever known. The old cat slows his pace. He steps into the deep shadow of an ancient pine where the winter snow has made its final stand. He circles slowly, as his ancestors did for 10,000 generations, before lowering his heavy, muscular frame onto the cool, damp bed of white. He rests his broad chin upon his paws, feeling the soft, soothing chill of the remaining frost against his fur. His breathing slows into a long, tranquil rhythm, drifting into harmony with the whisper of the wind through the pines. Outside his shelter, the last snow dissolves softly into the rich earth, feeding the green shoots of a world born anew. The golden light washes over his sleeping form, sealing the grand, timeless chronicle of the hunter in an unbroken, peaceful silence. The ghost of the Ice Age has finally found its rest, floating softly into the infinite dark as the long story comes to a quiet, serene close.